Hello，你好，Welcome back，欢迎回来to Wisdom Wednesday with Johnny Tiger on May 22nd, 2024. Before we go into today's episode, I want to give you a quick little warning, just a friendly warning that today's episode, like some of our past Wisdom Wednesday episode, will be touching upon something that may be considered very disturbing to some people and maybe a bit of a trigger for some people, although I don't think it's so much trigger as it's just a very disturbing topic we'll be talking about today. So if you don't want to hear about uh, uh, death and people marrying ghosts or people robbing people's tombs and stealing corpses and stuff like that. If that kind of thing is going to upset you, then I think this is an episode you will want to skip because we are going to uh, touch upon some rather dark and disturbing uh, reality matters in this episode. So if you want to skip this episode, I will see you guys in the next episode. But if you are interested to hear about the darker side of Chinese culture, because some people will say, well, yeah, you always talk about Chinese people invent this, and Chinese people started this, and you think it seems like you think Chinese people, you guys got the best culture in the world. No, I believe that every culture has its good and bad, and I think uh, blindly following and worship a culture, any culture, is not a smart thing to do. So while I am proud of some of the stuff, a lot of the stuff that my people have accomplished in this 5,000 years of recorded history, that's a long time, 5,000 years, you know. There has been a lot of despicable, disgusting, disturbing, inhumane things that also is worthwhile being pointed out, just so we know that it's not all roses and sunshine over there in the old country. And sadly, what I'm going to be talking about today is not something that we can say, oh, that was yesterday, oh, that was long ago. We don't do that anymore. Unfortunately, what we're talking about today is still going on today. So, what are we talking about? We are talking about ghost marriage. Um, if you look back in Chinese literature, especially popular fictions and fantasies, you will find that disturbingly, a huge portion of Chinese romance, Chinese love stories, especially those that came from the later Qin and Ming dynasties, a lot of these centered around uh, people falling in love with either demons or ghosts or monsters. Now, I think I mentioned this in when we talk about the fox and the weasels and those like animals that to in Chinese legend that can transform into demonic entities, and how sometimes people do fall in love with them because they tend to make themselves look really, really good and really gorgeous and all that stuff. Uh, it is a long-standing trend. For thousands of years, Chinese people have had a fascination of falling in love with things of the unknown, things from the beyond, the unobtainable. It's that it's that love that cannot be requited. It's that love that uh, even though you love each other, but you're from a different world, you can barely even feel each other or hear each other, but you truly understand each other. It's that kind of heartache, that kind of melancholy, that kind of unsatisfied, unrequited longing that see so many Chinese people through their teenage years and their in their romantic imagination, such as in the one of the biggest collection of monster and spiritual entities. One of the books called Liao Zhai. Liao Zhai have had many different editions. Some of them very erotic, some of them very hard to read because they are very uh, ancient. They are written in really old Chinese. Um, the outside basically has many stories where uh, either a man would fall in love with a spirit or a woman would fall in love with a spirit, and sometimes things work out, most times things don't work out. I want to quickly mention that this got nothing to do with necromancy or necrophiliac. Uh, necrophile tendency. When we talk about people who are necrophiles, these are people who have sexual attraction. They want to have sex with corpses. Okay, that's totally different. It's not what we're talking about here. When we talk about this kind of a ghostly relationship addressed in uh, romantic Chinese literatures, it's usually for example, a person who one of the very common trope is you fall asleep. Maybe you're traveling. Maybe you're traveling. Okay, you go to a strange place, and then you decide to camp out for the night. And in the middle of the night, uh, you are visited by a beautiful woman, and you something happened. You either have sex or you fall in love, and then this woman start visiting you every night, and you start to realize how come she's only here at night, and then you realize that because she's a ghost, she's a spirit, and then she tells you that she's here because she's stuck here because she was murdered or something really bad happened to her, and if you really love her, you can, this is how you can help her uh, uh, avenge herself or uh, make make right whatever that was wrong. So usually this is a very common trope. So it's not falling in love with a corpse. Okay, we're not talking about weird guys that just go have sex with corpses. We're talking about legit getting visited by spirits or demons or whatever, and then fall in love with them, and then have to fulfill a certain amount of obligation to help them, or sometimes get tricked by them into doing things for them, things like that. Now, while like we are standing here in broad daylight, this whole idea of falling in love with ghosts or demons may sound totally ridiculous. When you think about it, the mentality is not too different from people falling in love with someone they never met. They just talk to on the internet, right? Like, how do you know that person you are talking on on the internet is a real person, is not, well, an AI or a spirit or whatever? We can go in all kind of directions, or aliens. Uh, so in the old days when there's no internet, imagine that you spend most of your life being single, no one want to talk to you, no one care about you, and suddenly you run into this beautiful woman in the middle of the night, and she's willing to give you everything. She's a ghost. She doesn't have to worry about pregnancy. She doesn't have to worry about any kind of uh, 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 political correctness. She doesn't have to get her parents' permission. She's all yours. She's always beautiful. Like, you can see how this really can titillate the imagination of Chinese people for thousands of years. Unfortunately, when it comes to reality, uh, ghostly romance and ghost marriage is a lot darker and nowhere near as cute and cuddly and romantic as in our fantasy books. And today we are going to look at the real ghost marriage. What is ghost marriage? What is the purpose behind it? And what happens when ghost marriage is officiated in Chinese customs and Chinese society. Your last warning, we are going to start very soon. If this sounds like it's going to upset you, this is time to turn back. So let me explain this right quick. Okay, what is this weird custom of ghost marriage? This usually takes form of when someone in your family dies single. Okay, it can be both men or women. When this person died and they're single, they were not married, and for one reason or another, we'll touch upon the reasons later in the video. That your family decide that you want to get them a ghost marriage. Uh, this is done by buying a corpse from someone. So you look around on the internet. I'm not shitting you. It really, okay? Not you don't just Google it. Obviously, you need to know how to get onto the dark web. You look on the internet or you talk to people who know someone who knows someone, and you say, hey, my so and so just passed away, and we don't want them to be all alone in the afterlife, so we want to arrange a marriage for them. Can you find someone who's this is the kind of person they like? This is we want a person to be the same age as they are, and have 36 double D's, and I'm just like making things up as I go, right? So so you give them the specs of what you're looking for, and then they say, oh well, hey, I know someone who might be able to help you, and then you establish contact, and this person say, oh yeah, maybe my daughter just passed away, and she sounds like she's a perfect fit. So I will marry my daughter to your son, or whoever. Will make a ghost marriage if you pay me blah 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 amount of money. And then when you make sure you check the ID, you make sure you check the certification, the death certificate, and all that stuff. It's pretty official. Make sure they have the proper ID, and if everything look right, you pay the money and they deliver the body to you, and then you arrange a day just like a wedding day, except you always do ghost marriage at midnight. You never do it in the middle of the day. Okay, ghost marriage is always done at midnight, but you officiate it basically like a wedding. You do it like a wedding, and at the end of the wedding ceremony, you get people to dig a hole in the ground, and then you bury the two bodies in the same coffin, and they're married. They'll decompose together. They'll everything on their body will mix together. They're married, and the idea is they'll be together in the afterlife when you do this. So one of the most recent cases that really horrified a lot of people was in year 2016. Yeah, like I said, this is not some old world thing that's been left behind. This is still going on. 2016, in the Henan province in China, there was a family that their 22-year-old son passed away suddenly, still single. And because they loved him so much, they arranged a ghost marriage for him so he wouldn't be alone in the afterlife. So everything was done. The matchmaker, yeah, there's a matchmaker in the ghost marriage too. That's basically the middle person. The middle person was paid. The ghost bride's family were supposedly paid, and the body of the bride was delivered to them, and they found a good date, and at midnight they officiated a very formal, very fancy wedding for these two deceased people to be married, and then afterward they put them both in the coffin, together, and then they nail the coffin shut, and the workers started digging the hole so they can put the coffin in the ground. And this was when something really creepy happened. Just as the workers were digging the hole, they started hearing noise. There's something noise, like someone knocking on the coffin from the inside. Ah, and the workers and all the wedding guests that were still there were freaking out. They were backing away from the coffin, thinking that there's something uh, horrifying going on. And finally, someone said, "Hey, hey, hey! we're doing something right. We're doing something for them to get married. This is supposed to be a happy occasion. It's not. That's not. We're not doing anything wrong." And like in that coffin, it's just a boy and a girl. What are we scared of? Let's open the lid and see what's going on in there. What's causing that knocking noise? You never know. Maybe it's just a little animal. So a couple of the more brave villagers went up there with tools and opened up the lid of the coffin. And as soon as they opened the lid of the coffin, the bride sat up suddenly and opened her mouth, and she started making noise like ah. You can imagine how horrifying this was. Like midnight, like 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning, totally dark everywhere. You just open the coffin, and then the supposedly the dead bride just sitting up and making horrible noises. Everyone thought that she turned into a zombie or vampire or something. Some people ran away. Some people peed their pants. Some people that were still more logical quickly grabbed their cell phone and called the cops. And so the cops showed up. And once everything got back under control, the cops realized two things. One, the bride was actually alive. Uh, She wasn't dead. She wasn't a corpse. Two, she was mute and mentally challenged, so she couldn't tell them what this was about, how she got there, and what happened. She couldn't talk, and she wasn't bright enough to write things down for them. So suddenly, this turned from a traditional ghost marriage to something that was basically a crime because when you think about it, they almost buried a living, breathing human with a 22-year-old boy's body. Like that would have turned into murder right there. So this led to a huge, very complicated investigation. They tried to they tracked down the original people who sold this girl's supposed corpse, um, and it took a lot of tracing and backtracking through internet and emails and text messages and like the people really didn't want to be found, but finally the police were able to track them down, and there were six of them. The leader of, well, I don't want to say gang, but the leader of the group was a name by the guy by the name of John Lee. John Lee. John Lee was 65 years old. He used to be a pimp. When he was a pimp, he made his living by going around the city, and he would find homeless, uh, mentally challenged women. He would feed them and dress them up and then pimp them out to people who wanted a cheap, quick thrill. But after a few times doing that, he was arrested by police for pimping and thrown in jail. But after John Lee got out of jail, he realized that this trying to pimp living people is too hard because some people will talk, some people will turn him in, and they even become witness against you afterward. So John Lee decided to uh, use his talent in a different direction. He decided that rather than making money by pimping people out to living people, he's going to start making money by arranging ghost marriage for dead people. So what he did was he went around the city and tracked down mentally challenged, homeless females, and then he would take them back to his house and let them stay there. And the idea he had was he would put on the internet that he has bodies for ghost marriages. And as soon as someone contact him and say, hey, this is what we're looking for a 25-year-old female, this tall, this big. And if he has someone he's staying at his house at the time that is suitable, he would put drug in her food so she would pass out, and then he would put her in the coffin and sell her like a corpse. And she would obviously get buried alive, and no one would be the wiser. He get paid, and the family would get the ghost marriage they want, and the city would get one less homeless, mentally challenged person. Yeah, like I said, this is very dark. Okay, like I'm telling you guys this, and I'm like feeling my muscles tensing, and I'm here clenching my fist. Like this is very despicable stuff. Right? Luckily, luckily for all the women that John Lee had staying at his place, because when the police arrested him, they found 14 females, all of them mentally challenged, all of them homeless, staying in his basement, just being prepared to be the next ghost marriage subject. This mute lady in the beginning of our story that set out in the coffin and came back to life. This was his the first one. This was the first one he tried to sell as a fake corpse. And so lucky for her that she woke up before they planted her in the ground, and so lucky for the rest of the women that this led to John Lee and his group getting arrested. Otherwise, who knows how many of them would have gotten buried alive when people thought that they were actually corpses to be married off to dead people. Now, when interviewed by police, they asked John Lee, why did you choose such a risky way of doing this? Like, didn't you realize that this is very weird? Like, if you wanted corpses, how come you didn't just kill these girls? How come you didn't kill these girls? How come you drug them and then sell them as like fake corpses and run the risk of them waking up like what just happened here? To everybody's surprise, John Lee looked at the officer and said, because murdering someone is wrong. So, like, here's this guy who somehow convinced himself that selling these girls like as fake corpses for them to get buried alive was okay as long as he wasn't killing them himself with his own two hands. Like for some reason he felt that wasn't murder, but if he wouldn't kill them himself because he felt that would be murder and murder was wrong. Like talk about a really weird sense of logic and right and wrong and morality there. Unfortunately, not all of them feel the same way. Rewind to 2007. Also in China, there was a serial killer by the name of Song Song Tiantang, which is ironic because it translates to heavenly song, right? So we'll call him Song. I don't want to put heavenly there; it's just too disturbing. This Song was a dog breeder, and his own dog breeding business was facing some financial challenges. So he decided to find an alternative way to raise money to help support his dog breeding uh, business. So he went around the city and talked to homeless, mentally challenged females, and he put out uh, advertisement on the dark web. He had corpses to sell for ghost marriages. And when he got a prospective buyer, he would go look for a female that fit the bill. And when he found a homeless female that fit the bill, he would take her back to his place and strangle her to death and sell her corpse. And the money from selling the corpse would be funded back through his dog breeding business. Uh, he killed and sold six homeless females before he was finally arrested. Okay. Uh, so yeah, there there has been quite a few cases that I have heard about and read about throughout the years of things that people that did similar stuff that go and kill some disabled person or homeless person and sell their body as a ghost bride or ghost groom for ghost marriages. It's really disturbing stuff. Even the dead is not immune to this kind of craziness. Again, in 2016, also in Henan province in China, in a small remote village, there's a farmer by the name of Yang. We'll call him Farmer Yang. So Farmer Yang, his wife, who was 54 years old, has just passed away, and Farmer Yang buried her uh, in a piece of ground beside his field. So every day when he went to work the field, he would stop and put fruit and flower and he would sit and talk to his deceased wife. Farmer Yang was a very romantic, very devoted husband. Fast forward to 2017, around July 2017. It was one day that Farmer Yang went to the grave site to visit his wife, and he suddenly realized something's wrong. Uh, the soil looked soft and fresh, almost like someone dug up the soil and put them back. And the fruit and flower he left there previous day, they don't look like they were in the same position that he put them there. Uh, and at first he thought maybe it's just got disturbed by wild animal or something. Uh, but then when he went home that day, he was reading the newspaper and he saw something that really got him thinking. His neighbor, Farmer Lee, uh, was visiting the grave of his also deceased wife, and Farmer Lee started noticing that there were cigarette butts and empty water bottles, like um, empty bottles, by the graveside. Now he knew those were not from him, so he's wondering who's been visiting his wife's graves. And then he noticed that there were parts of the ground that looked like it's sinking in. So that got him worried. So he grabbed a shovel and dug up his wife's grave. And to his horror and fury, he saw that the coffin had been opened and the corpse was nowhere to be seen. So he called the cops and reported it. Now, when Farmer Yang saw this on the news in the newspaper, he immediately thought about his own wife's grave. Like, well, maybe that's what's going on. And so he quickly grabbed a shovel and went back to the field and dug up his wife's grave. And voila, yeah, just as he saw. The corpse was gone, the coffin was smashed open, the corpse was gone. Farmer Yang quickly reported this to the police as well. And these two reports started basically a big chain reaction of fear and concern in the entire village. And people started digging up the graves of their loved ones to see if the body is still okay. In the end of the investigation, there were 14 graves that got robbed just all in that one year, in between 2016 and 2017, in that village. Okay, in that one village, 14, 15 graves were robbed, and uh, all the corpses were missing, all of them female. The youngest was 45 years old, the oldest was in her 90s. And these were not always newly buried corpses. Some of these were corpses that had been there for several years. It took the police a couple more years before they tracked down people that were responsible for all this grave robbing, and it turned out to be a massive, well organized ring that's been going on for upward of 30, 40 years. The head of this ring of corpse stealing and corpse selling, corpse trade was a guy by the name of Gu, uh, Gu, and Mr. Gu had mentioned to the police during interrogation that he has traded and personally stolen over 40 corpses in his time, and he has sold even more. Um, they've arrested drivers, transport people who transported these corpses, and even hospital workers that were involved in these incidences. Because when you think about it, stealing corpse is not an easy thing. Like, after you get the corpse out of the ground, what are you going to do? You unless you can sell it right away, but sometimes it might have to sit there for a few days. So how do you make sure that this thing is not stinking up your house? You can't put it in your freezer. So what this these people had done was they bribed the local hospital to let them use the morgue. So every time they got a new corpse and they wanted to store it somewhere, they would bring it to the hospital and they would pay the hospital a donation under the table, and they would be able to store the corpse in the morgue until they can sell it. So even the local hospitals were involved in this, and uh, a lot of people were caught up in this madness, and they even had a complete website on the dark web, complete with prices and categories for these corpses. Um, the corpses that were brand new, like just died yesterday kind of corpse, it's called fresh corpse. Fresh corpse were priced at somewhere around $10,000 US, and corpse that's been in there for a while but still uh, relatively okay. These are called wet corpses that basically are decomposing and all slimy and disgusting and stuff. Wet corpses were good for $5,000 US, and the really old corpses, like almost skeletons, these are called dry corpses, and dry corpses were good for about $2,000 US. And if a corpse was fresh and looked very attractive, or have a high social status, like a superstar or something like that, then that corpse can go up to hundreds of thousands of dollars. Those corpses were hard to find. So when we look at this, it's crazy how well organized these corpse trades are, and how they have a complete supply chain from people who steal the corpses, people who transport them, people who store them, and people who match make the ghost marriage, and then finally the corpse gets sold to whoever they're married to. So I imagine a lot of you probably want to know, so what is the point of this nonsense? Why? It just boggles the mind. And don't worry, I kind of feel the same way too, right? Because I grew up in Taiwan, and I grew up in Taiwan and then Canada, so I have a lot of uh, problem understanding these old world beliefs. But we have to remember countries like China, India, Egypt. Some of these countries that have been around for thousands and thousands of years, these old countries, they have old beliefs. Some of these old beliefs are very, very hard to abolish. Even when you make them criminal activities, even when you make a law that say they're wrong, people still do them because it's the old belief. Kind of like cannibalism in some parts of the world. Like, do they not know it's wrong? Of course they know it's wrong. Do they not know that people hate them for it? Of course they do. But they still do it because it's tradition. Just like I'm sure most of you who have exposure to really old people in your circle or in your family have experienced that. You know, they're so old, they still remember how things were done in 1920s. And even though they don't have to do it that way anymore, they'll still do it because it's the old way. And to them, that's the way they know. So old countries are the same way. And ghost marriage has been part of Chinese culture for thousands of years, always been a darker, hidden part of Chinese culture because ever since 3,000 years ago, the Chinese emperors have already made a law that said ghost marriages were inhumane and should be abolished. But even then, people still been doing it for thousands of years. The reason for ghost marriage is the superstition around procreation. And uh, I talked about this before that in Chinese culture, the biggest sin, number one taboo, is not cheating or stealing or lying. Number one sin is not having offspring, not procreate. That's number one sin in Chinese culture. So if a child or a relative die and is single and have no offspring, in a lot of parts of China, that person is not allowed to be buried with his family. He's not allowed on the family plot because he's a disgrace. So to navigate that, a lot of people will arrange a ghost marriage so this person can be buried nice and proper on his family plot. There's also some parts of China where people believe that if you bury a person, a family member, and you don't give them a ghost marriage, if you bury them alone, then they will curse the descendants. They will curse the rest of you. So everyone who's alive will find financial hardship and accidents and all that unpleasantness. So to head that off, people rather arrange a ghost marriage for these people so their spirit wouldn't be angry and horny and curse the living and all that stuff. Yes, it sounds ridiculous, but like I said, it's been going on for 3,000 years as far as we know. Some of the examples from the early days, from the Ming and Qing dynasties, we know that in the Ming and Qing dynasties, they actually have two types of ghost marriage. One was the ghost marriage for adults, and then one was ghost marriage for children. So if children passed away before reaching adulthood, and you wanted them to get married, get a ghost marriage, is a different kind of ceremony, different sets of rites. Uh, so they even categorize that. In the Qing dynasty, there's even a more brutal kind of marriage, and this is called ghost widow. What is ghost widow? is marrying a living person to a dead person, and usually this happened when uh, the two, let's say, two people were arranged to be married from child, because back then it's all arranged marriage. So usually from the day you were born or from when you were 1 or 2 years old, your parents already arranged marriage for you and the other person. So let's say you have an arranged marriage, but before you can actually get married, the other half, the other person died because of a disease or something. Well, in this case, the family can choose to do one of two things. They can choose to annul the marriage because the one side died, but if the family want to be a dick about it, they can uh, they can uh, invoke the right of the ghost widow. And how does that work? Is they go to the magistrate and say, hey, you know, they they we arranged this marriage. I paid them 5,000 gold already. So even though my sons passed away, their daughter has to be married to my son. It's because it's all arranged and paid for. And if the magistrate is not a very good person, or if the magistrate is bribed, then the magistrate can say, yeah, okay, yeah, go ahead. This is what's supposed to happen. So what happens then is the living person is brought to a wedding ceremony and married, like they'll do the whole marriage, like as if both parties were alive, but rather than two people, it's one person and the other person's tombstone. And after the wedding ceremony, the living person is then locked inside a dark chamber, almost like solitary, almost like being put in solitary. And there she is going to, because it's always a she, the ghost widow is always going, like, I hate to say this, but yeah, back then, only women have to suffer this. The ghost widow thing never happened to boys. It's always women. So the bride is locked in solitary confinement for the rest of her life. She's in this dark room. They have to have no window, and the door is locked. She's never allowed to leave. She's not allowed to be in contact with living people other than the one maid who was tasked to take care of her and get her food and clean her and help her bathe and stuff like that. That's the only living person she's allowed to have contact with for the rest of her life, because her life is now belong to her dead husband, and to uh, have contact with the living world would be unfaithful to her dead husband. So it's a very cruel form of ghost marriage that luckily has been abolished since the end of the imperial system. Um, we can even go back to 2,000 years ago, in the time of the Three Kingdom, uh, where the warlord Cao Cao, we talked about him many times before, warlord Cao Cao of the Wei Kingdom, when his youngest son passed away, uh, and still a teenager, Cao Cao was so heartbroken, and he wanted to arrange a ghost marriage for his son. And just at the time, one of his underlings, by the name of Bing Yuan's daughter, who was about the same age as Cao Cao's son, also passed away. And so Cao Cao went to Bing Yuan and said, "Hey, uh, I would like my youngest son to be married to your daughter. Let's do a ghost marriage, and you'll be my in-law, just like the real thing." Uh, Now, a lot of people would have jumped at this chance, like because Cao Cao was such a powerful warlord. A lot of people would either be scared to say no to him or jump at the chance to be his in-law, because then you have wealth and power and protection and all that. But Bing Yuan was a very good person with a lot of integrity, and Bing Yuan said to Cao Cao, No, Your Highness, we cannot do that, because to do that would be going against the law set down by emperors after emperors. Every emperors in our history have said that ghost marriage should be abolished, so we cannot go against their wishes. Even further back, around the time of Confucius, Confucius himself had made a comment about ghost marriage. Confucius was a big opposing force against ghost marriage. Confucius had once written in his book that, with regarding to when people asked him, "What do you think of ghost marriage?" Confucius said, and I quote, "We don't even understand the living. What right do we have to interfere with the dead?" And it is with that, I'm going to leave you with this nice quote from Confucius, and let's close the chapter on this very dark and disturbing episode on a Chinese tradition that sadly is still going on today, even though it's on the dark web, it's under the table. Let's hope that this will be truly gone sometime soon. Thank you for checking out today's episode, and I'll be back again tomorrow for Toy Thursday. For now, 谢谢 and 再见。